Good evening, friends, and welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. We are two retired New York City police detectives, and if you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, you know the drill. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you'll get all things DutyRon, and when he's available, Ed Wallace, when we go live or uploaded a video. Tonight, I've got my great friend, Melanie Little. She's an attorney. She's filling in for Ed, co-hosting with me. She's been graceful to give us our time, gracious to give us our time. I appreciate you being here. Melanie, how you doing today? And we got a lot to talk about tonight.
I'm doing great. And we have such an exciting guest tonight too. So what do you say? Guys, you're going to love this. If you've been following this Lori Vallow Daybell trial
for 6 weeks, Gigi McKelvey, she's going to be joining us in a few. She's in the green room, getting hair and makeup done, which she's already have done. So she's just hanging out waiting for us. Gigi and I were trying to get together on and off, but she's been so busy covering this Lori Vallow Daybell trial. It was just almost impossible to get her. And when she did get some time, our internet gods failed us. So things happen, you know, and it is what it is. But before we get into it, I want to say a special thank you to you, the replay viewers, the Patreon supporters, you guys who are channel members, moderators, you know, replay viewers, new subscribers, old subscribers. We love you guys. We give thanks and praise to you for your engagement. When you leave comments down below, you question us, you ask those important questions. And, you know, Melanie and I, we talk all the time, and she says one of the best parts, and I agree wholeheartedly, one of the best parts about the true crime community, especially the Crime Time with DutyRon community, is that we have an educated audience because we bring on the professionals to talk about the cases. Ed Wallace is a crime scene unit investigator and a DNA and forensic expert. We bring on forensic anthropologists, you know, everything under the sun, including our attorney and good friend here, Melanie Little. So, you know, this trial was an emotional roller coaster. We're talking about numerous victims, young and old, children, autistic, just horrific. And what we heard, just as listeners and viewers, folks from the trade like myself, it was hard. It was hard for me to watch this thing unfold and listen to it. Could you imagine what our guest, what she went through, seeing these crime scene photos and seeing and hearing about some of these heinous acts against humanity and children? It's just horrific. Melanie, I know that you and I, again, when we look at this and we cover this stuff, we're parents ourselves. And when we see this, it hurts. It hurts in the heart. Any thoughts on, you know, Gigi and all of the news reporters that had to go through this and the folks locally?
Yeah, I mean, this one shook me to the core. I have 5 kids, and anything that has to do with kids, any of the stories that we cover about kids, and it seems that there's been a lot of them lately, just really affect me deeply. And we cover so many different trials that we haven't really dove so deeply into this one. So I thank Gigi for covering it so well, because I would often have to catch up and I would watch her coverage or listen to her podcast to catch up myself. But I cannot imagine what it would have been like to sit there for 6 weeks and listen to this day in and day out. And I can only imagine how exhausting it can be and how exhausted Gigi must be.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm going to play a little clip again from this is News Nation, but Gigi is a correspondent for Law and Crime. So she went there representing Law and Crime, and she did such a great job. But I want to play this piece from News Nation, because if you look at the caption here, this tells the story of what we're just talking about. Investigators found J.J. Vallow's head in a plastic bag. These are some of the parts of these gruesome trials that are difficult at best to listen to. I want to just play this quickly because we're going to bring Gigi on after this.
Can we just give a trigger warning?
Yeah, trigger warning, folks. We're going to be playing some sensitive stuff here, but I'm just going to play a short clip of it because I want to highlight Gigi's great work that she's done, not just for Law and Crime, but for News Nation and anybody who needed to have on-site court, reporting from the court. So Gigi did a great job. Let's let it play.
Calls to her son, Colby Ryan, and her sister, so nonchalant about the death of her kids, so saying you don't understand what happened. I think those calls, and also the hair, her hair found on the duct tape that was wrapped on her son, might be the biggest pieces of evidence.
Well, Gigi, today in court, we did hear the final test witnesses in the prosecution's case, and I don't know. I felt like I had to take a shower afterwards. There were so many sexual text messages between Lori and Chad, lots of fire and heart emojis. These two were acting like lovesick teenagers. I mean, I just want to read a couple of these. I love you. I love you more. What wonderful chemistry we share. That's so hot. I need you now more than ever. We're definitely in new territory in your bedroom. Barely able to breathe. The fire is definitely burning. My gosh.
Yeah, it's been embarrassing to say the least. There's been some uncomfortable shifts in jury seats and in the public seats as well. It's just, and knowing what has happened in between these text messages, one of them was literally the day Tammy Daybell was murdered. They're doing this through text messages. So when you talk about did the state prove their case? Lori is going to be her own worst enemy. The body cam video of the welfare check where she tells elaborate lies about where JJ is. And then leaving to go to Hawaii. This video we saw of her in the bikini in the lounge chair, just when they serve her with the paper to produce the kids. I think this is a slam dunk. And unfortunately, we've had to read some private things that will stick with us a very long time, too.
I have to say, Brian, Gigi makes a good point. In many ways and in many cases, it's Lori's own recorded words that are the most damning test.
So I want to stop it right there. So earlier before that, and I had that queued up for a reason, and I didn't even think about it. I pushed it forward so we didn't have to hear about those gruesome details. But that's just some great reporting that Gigi did. It's one of her many pieces. Again, Melanie, this trial, it was just an emotional roller coaster of different variations of really sick, twisted behavior from Tammy, from Lori, and Chad. So it's
horrifying, difficult.
Listen, without further ado, she's the host of Pretty Lies and Alibis, a YouTube channel and a podcast. She's Law and Crime's regular reporter here from the courthouse. So without further ado, Gigi McKelvey. Hey, how are you, Gigi McKelvey?
Hey, everybody. I just want to say hey to everybody in chat that said hello. Hello, Melanie and DutyRon. I'm a huge fan. I've watched you forever, so I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to have you. And you know what? I was thinking about what we talked about before we went live, and I screwed it up. I didn't call you Gigi McKelvey. I called you McAlee.
That's what telemarketers call me. That's how I know when to hang up.
Yeah. Gigi, that little piece that we just played there, I mean, I wanted to set it up for folks to see the ups and downs. I heard you speaking on your own channel about a particular time you were going on with Cuomo on News Nation, and you had a little bit of a incident where you were just not feeling well, and you had someone there to help you, to support you, to get you back on through the testimony and the crazy hours that you're keeping and so forth. This has been just has to been an emotional roller coaster for you. Could you just tell the audience a little bit about your ups and downs in this trial? 6 weeks, right?
Yeah, 6 weeks. And that day we were finished with testimony, and I was doing some News Nation stuff in the evening. And this was the day that we first saw the autopsy picture, the crime scene photos, and then a progression photo of the autopsy pictures where they unlayered everything he was wrapped in. And I just couldn't eat lunch, and I had about 60 ounces of coffee in my stomach. And I was on next. They were at break. I had to throw my mic off and just go lose my coffee. It was just like a pressure cooker, because at Chad's preliminary hearing, we learned a lot about what to expect at trial as far as the condition of the remains. But it's one thing to hear it, but to see it, I've seen a lot of crime scene photos that are disturbing, and none wins. There's none that's worse than the other. They all are just have their own weight. And 3.5 years, I launched this podcast with my best friend the day they found the kids' bodies. And I've become very good friends with Kay and Larry Woodcock. And I think that added layer just made it more emotional. And I can't describe what we saw in that courtroom with the remains of JJ, Tylee, and Tammy. It was way worse than any of us could have ever imagined. And what these kids went through and what Tammy went through in the last few minutes of their life is something that I will always be haunted when I think about, and the images I'll never get rid of in my head. But it's part of what true crime is with no cameras, we tell their story for you. The audio was there. Some people don't have time to listen to 7-8 hours of testimony. So for me, as hard as it was an honor to tell their story, but their lives aren't the sum of what they did to them. That's not their story. We just told what happened in the end. And I think that's really important, that their legacies move on without Lori and Chad ever being mentioned with their names.
Mm. Yeah. And, you know, I've always had these thoughts and questions in my mind, you know, what makes people do these really evil and vile things? And in this case, we got to see clear and concise. You know, there was that cliche, that statement, the sex, money, and I forgot what the other one was, but
Power.
Yeah, power. Thank you. Anything that's extreme, when it becomes, you know, whether it's religion or anything that's over the top, can be dangerous and deadly. And we saw that in this case here. And Melanie, I know you had a couple of questions for Gigi, but I wanted to find out from Gigi before we get into the questioning, what got you started in this? Like, how did this all develop? How did you get hooked up with law and crime to cover these cases? I know you did murder. You were there. You're local in South Carolina. Just for the folks who maybe might not know that much about you, could you just give our audience just a little bit of like background on how you got started with this, Gigi?
Yeah. So years ago, I was on an internet show that was true crime based and got to sit in some pretty big trials like Jodi Arias, the Colorado theater shooter, which Jodi Arias is where I met Kathy Russin, who is an executive producer for Law and Crime. Now, back then she had Court Chatter, which kind of led the way in live streaming trials. She kind of pioneered that. And we just stayed in contact over the years. And just out of the blue, she knew I had the podcast and contacted me one day and said, "Hey, you're kind of local. You know, I was able to drive home every weekend from Murdoch. It's only less than 3 hours from me." And she asked if I would do it. And I said yes. And then I hung up the phone and I was like, holy crap, what did I just agree to? I've never done live reporting from trials, but they trusted me with it and we did it. And then when Vallow came along, she knew that I'd done extensive research. I have a Connecting the Dots series, which is nearly 60 episodes, way backstory. It includes everything we know. And she said, "You know the trial. Would you be willing to go out there and be our correspondent?" I jumped at the chance. It was not something that I could have done on my own for 6 weeks. So that sort of years ago got out of it because my kids were much smaller. Now I have teenagers and an 11-year-old. And family all around my neighborhood. Literally, parents live 2 houses up, brother and his family's across the street. My 88-year-old grandma came and ran the house while I was gone. And I came home pretty much every weekend. So it's been interesting. But yeah, I got my start years ago, probably back in about 2013, doing this once a week on the internet, and then got out. Just the travel was too much, having little kids. I don't like to be away from my kids, but with the podcast, it was born out of COVID boredom, really. And then the day they found the kids' bodies, I've been following this since the very first article came out. Did a lot of sleuthing online, found a lot of really disturbing things, especially like with Alex Cox. He was a member of some very questionable groups online. And I told my best friend, who was my co-host at the time, read up on this. This is going to be one for the books. And I wasn't wrong. And so when we saw that overhead of Nate Eaton, Justin Lum, who were on this from day one, I said, get over here. It's now or never. We had 7 listeners that day using a built-in mic on the iMac, and it went from there. And we have a great group of listeners, or I have a great group of listeners now. Fruit Loop left. She has a safe haven for victims of domestic violence with a friend of hers. And so I'm proud of her. She's doing what she feels called to do. I'm doing what I feel called to do. And so that's kind of how I got into true crime.
Wow. Yeah, I saw you make mention of Fruit Loop, and I saw her on with you. So yeah, kudos to her. She's doing God's work.
She really is. And they're already helping men, women, and children who are victims, and you know, doing what we do. We know the end result of a lot of these domestic violence relationships. So she's out there saving lives. Couldn't be prouder of my best friend.
Yeah. Melanie, I'm going to let you take over now, because I
Awesome.
know you got a lot to talk with her about.
Well, one of the things that I was wondering, because you were sitting there every day, so you got to watch her, you got to watch her body language. We were, you know, watching, we were listening to you, and you were our eyes, and then we saw a lot of sketches, and the sketch artist in the courtroom was great. But based on everything that you saw and heard, obviously we didn't hear from her, which I would have loved to.
Yeah, me too. It came down to the wire, I'm told.
Really?
They talked her out of it. And I think the reason being is that it really would have just, her appeal chances would have went out the window. And I think that maybe that's
Yeah.
how they sold her, but it was a last minute decision not to put her up, from what I'm told.
I thought that she would be like Murdoch, like such a narcissist, that she would have to get up there and tell her story, because she couldn't let anybody think that she, you know, was as horrible as we
And
now
she's
know
done
her
it in
to
the
be.
past. She has wiggled her way out of very tight spots with law enforcement successfully. So I thought, in her mind, she thinks she can win this jury over and walk out the door. That's what I thought.
Every video that I saw of her doing an interview with one of the police officers, she was flirting with them. She's
Yep.
twirling her hair. She's crossing her legs. You know, she really
Yeah.
thought that she could get away with it. Do you think that she was really a true believer as far as this, you know, they're calling it a cult, but as far as this religion goes, or do you think she was using that as an excuse to get to what she wanted, you know, the money and the power?
No, I think she did believe, and I think she still believes from what I've heard. You know, and one of the big reasons I'll say it is this: if you look at the text messages, and a lot of that wasn't brought in the trial, a lot of that was in the Chandler document dump and the Gilbert document dump, which, by the way, she was just indicted today for attempted murder for Brandon Boudreaux. And I call her Melanie's, Lori's niece, her ex-husband, who was wealthy and had life insurance policies, and the one Alex shot at. She was just charged today with that, by the way. 2 pending conspiracy to commit first-degree murder charges now await her in Arizona. But if you read the text messages between her and Alex, when it's just the two of them, and there's no need to fudge it if you really don't believe it, they were all in. But the kicker is this: you can have religious delusions, you can have mental illness, and still be culpable. And that's why we were where we were in that trial, because crazy would be sitting in a police station and saying, of course we killed Charles, but it wasn't Charles. It was a demon. Yeah, JJ's not alive anymore. He's in Chad's backyard, but he was a demon. So was Tylee. That is somebody who is so far gone, they have no clue. Instead, what we saw were elaborate lies of he's in Arizona with Melanie Gibb, and then they call Melanie Gibb, don't pick up the phone. I do think she believed, but not so much that she did not know what she was doing was a crime. That's kind of, but I do think I've heard she still believes a lot of this hogwash that Chad sold. I think she believed it more than Chad. Alex was all in. He 100% believed it, never doubted it. And I think that if I will die on the hill that Alex Cox did not die a natural death, but he was cremated, we'll never know.
Yeah. Were you surprised that Tammy was not cremated?
I was, because that might
was too.
have, you know, them gotten away with it. And you think about it, had they not killed the kids, unfortunately, I think they would have gotten away with Charles and Tammy both. It was the kids. It was the attempt on Brandon. Those two things, the attempt on Brandon, he started doing some Googling, found out Tammy Daybell dies. He alerts authorities in Arizona, hey, we've got another layer that's really between the welfare check that Kay called in and Brandon. That kickstarted the search for the kids. Had they left JJ and Tylee alive, don't think we would be here today. Unfortunately, I think they both would have gotten away with murder.
I want to just say that I love that you used hogwash, because that's one of my favorite freaking terms. I use hogwash all the time here. So thank you for using that. And I agree. It's total hogwash.
Yeah.
I have the breaking news that broke today. This is I'm not sure if, yeah, this is from Law and Crime. So I want to play this real quick. I won't play the whole thing, but for the folks who are asking questions in the chat, I just want to give them a little bit of this.
Okay, we have breaking news. Lori Vallow Daybell has been indicted in Arizona for conspiracy to commit murder of Brandon Boudreaux, who is the nephew-in-law. Let me just turn to our guest real quick. I mean, this case is the case that keeps on giving, Gene Rossi. Now, yet another indictment that's come down after a conviction. What are your thoughts?
I think you have classic obstruction and witness tampering. I assume that nephew Brandon was not killed. It was attempted murder, but it's probably allegedly that he knew too much. He knew where, no pun intended, he knew where the bodies were buried.
Yeah, Julie, what are your thoughts, by the way, about the conviction? We haven't had a time to talk about it, and this latest development.
I mean, the conviction, I think, was a long time coming. I don't think anyone was surprised by it. I think it's interesting to imagine that there's going to be potentially another trial regarding her. Perhaps, you know, some might argue that money is better spent elsewhere, considering she's been convicted with the impossibility of her ever getting out. But again, there's always an appeal aspect, so you never know what will happen. You know, she will remain in the news, I guess, for a long time to come.
And I think that's what she wants. In my eyes, as a retired detective from the NYPD, I feel that anybody and anything that got in the way of these two, especially Lori, was eliminated. And they went under the guise of religion and these demons to justify it. And that's what makes it really over the top when I talk about extreme, you know, extreme beliefs, extreme behaviors. They tend to become very dangerous, and people were dying left and right. Hey, Gigi, did you see Charles Vallow's brother, Jerry? I saw him standing behind Larry Woodcock after the verdicts were read. I've had many conversations on landline phones with his wife, Melanie, and also Jerry. Great people. Charles' brother, we can't forget that there needs to be justice for Charles as well. He was murdered on the order, I would have to assume, on the order of Lori Shallow Vallow. And I love to call her Shallow Vallow because she is shallow. Did you get a chance to talk to Jerry?
Yeah, I did. In fact, one night I went
He's us. He's like us.
Yeah, Jerry is one of my favorite people. He's great. He's a sweetheart. I got to know him over the course of the trial. Had not met him in person before the trial, but he's funny. He has a great sense of humor, and he misses his brother and his nephew. And you know, I agree with what she just said. You know, which is people always say, well, okay, so like Lori's facing life sentences, but you know, Charles deserves to have his murder avenged in the court system, as does the attempt on Brandon. And pile it on as you may, her next 3 or 4 probations are just going to be in jail if that's what she believes, because she's got like, you know, 4 life sentences, so the next 4 are going to be in the pokey.
Right.
But no, I'm all for this. And people wonder, is she gonna even allow to be extradited? Yeah, it's a plane ride. She gets to get out of jail. She gets to look out of an airplane window. I think she goes. I think she fights it, and I think she loses, because it was very clear in those text messages, some of which were not shown in this trial because you have the prior bad acts ruling and that kind of thing, that are very, very incriminating. And, you know, she texted Melanie before she even left the driveway after that shooting. She calls Audrey, who had testified in this trial. She's the one who said Lori threatened to cut her up into pieces in the Walgreens 20 minutes after Charles is murdered, and she's buying flip-flops. There's so much there. And so I don't think we know that a lot of that was redacted in the Chandler report. It's over 1,000 pages. I think I've read it 10 times, but there's going to be some really incriminating text messages, I believe, because what wasn't redacted was already bad. Yeah. So I think he was ambushed. I think where I've seen the crime scene photos where he lay, I think he got in the door and got shot. I do not buy this theory of a fight or anything like that. Where he was laying was right by the 2 steps you come down when you come in the front door. And that bat was way back here, nowhere near where he would have had it.
Gigi, I have a whole hour and 30-minute live stream that I did on that crime scene with my partner, Ed Wallace. He's a retired New York City Police crime scene unit expert. And we talked about some of the things that you just mentioned in that hour and a half live stream. I'm going to link it down below in the
Oh
description.
yeah, I'd love to watch that.
Yeah. And anytime that you do any of this coverage going forward, and if you need experts and things of that nature when it comes to crime scenes, crime scene reconstruction and so forth, Ed is the guy. As a matter of fact, a few times I've offered his services to talk with Jerry and Melanie, his wife, and they a few times said, we would love to talk to him when it gets to that point. But yeah, we can't forget all of the victims and potential victims of these two. There's so many more people who, like we're hearing about, got threatened, got, just bizarre conversations back and forth that we've yet to hear about. Just this whole case is just it's on a whole nother level of bizarreness. And had they not got caught, who God only knows how much death we could be talking about here going forward.
Thank goodness Alex was a bad shot with Brandon, because he could have been number 5. And then we learn at trial that 3 of Melanie's, I call her Melanie's because there's Melanie Gibb and Melanie Pulowski. It gets confusing. So I coined Melanie's because it's easier. 3 of her kids were deemed dark. And there's a text where Chad's asking Lori, do you want me to give them something to cry about, to make them scream or something of that nature, as they're driving in the car with JJ to California to go to the beach. So I'm a firm believer that if Brandon had been murdered, Melanie's kids may have been victims 6, 7, and 8. They wanted none of these kids around. When she went to Hawaii and met up with her old friend April Raymond from when she lived on the island with Charles and Tylee and JJ, I'm here to gather you, but you can't bring your kids. You served your purpose with your kids. They were 10 and 12. I hope I haven't served my purpose with my kids until I take my last breath. But kids were obstacles, and that was the word Chad used. JJ, Tylee, Tammy, Charles, obstacles, according to Chad.
Might be a good time for a question. I've seen a couple of the same question in the chat. So this one's from Jill Argos, and she says, Gigi, do you think Melanie will be charged with Brandon?
I've been thinking about that all day. And the thing, she was there at the courthouse. I saw her. She did not testify. That was the prosecution's choice. My theory on that, maybe she just emotionally wasn't stable enough for them to go on for the state. But if she's not charged, I would imagine it would sort of be a situation like Chad Daybell, where there just wasn't enough digital evidence to prove that he participated in the conspiracy, even though he made the call to the mortuary and all the things and made some vile comments in text. I think it's all going to come down to, do they have digital evidence with her implicating her? Because Lori will not rat her out. Chad will not rat her out. So I think if she doesn't, it's just because maybe out of everybody, she seemed to be the one who did not put a lot of incriminating stuff in text messages, unlike these other knuckleheads like Alex Cox. Let's go bury a body and have my phone in the back pocket. Thank goodness he did. Right. Because without that, I don't know we would have found the kids, to be honest. But I think she's a little younger. She understands how it works. So I'm curious. I hope so, because she knew way more than what I thought she knew after this trial. So we'll see. But I kind of feel like, are they just doing it one at a time? Are they saying, hey, by the way, we got Lori for these 2. We got her for Charles and Brandon. But are they going to wait to announce Melanie's? I don't know. I think it's 50-50 whether or not she gets charged. Right now, she has 50-50 custody of her kids with Brandon and a child with Ian. They have their own child together now.
Wow. Hey, I just wanted to go to the chat real quick. Hey, if you guys have any questions, put hashtag Gigi, hashtag Melanie, hashtag DutyRon, and we will highlight your questions. We're going to take a Q&A at the last 10 minutes of this live stream. If you're not yet subscribed, please consider hitting the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Also, I will link, it actually is linked down below in the description, Pretty Lies and Alibis YouTube channel. I need everyone from Crime Time with DutyRon's community. If you're not yet subscribed to Gigi's YouTube channel, I need you guys to go on over there, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you hit that notification bell, set it to all, So you get all of her uploads and her videos and her everything that she does. I want you guys to all go over there and support her, because she's given up so much time, so much of her time for us, for the benefit of us, who we didn't have eyes into the courtroom, and Gigi was our eyes and ears. So thank you for that, Gigi. Hey, I wanted to find out from you some of the mannerisms of Shallow Vallow during the course of this trial. We also heard that Chad Daybell's attorney, he was in the courtroom listening, Mr. Pryor, right? John was in the courtroom almost every day, according to yourself and other people that I've been following. Could you just give some of the folks that are in here that may not have heard about this, what was, like the day-to-day? Did Lori make eye contact with a lot of people? I know that she made eye contact with you. Let the folks know what you saw on a daily.
She was all over the map. I mean, I think the most emotion I saw was the day that they showed the very graphic autopsy pictures. I don't think she had seen those. And maybe during lunch, they tried to prepare her for what was going to be on screen. That was the day she wanted to waive her right to be in court. And Judge Boyce was like, nah, you're going to sit here. That was the most emotional day I saw. But for the most part, you could have a death picture on the screen and 30 seconds later, she's giggling with her attorneys. It didn't, her verbal reactions, her physical reactions did not match what we were there for. I do think something's off with her. Doesn't excuse culpability, but she wrote in a notepad a lot. She could have been just labeling us light and dark for all we know, but she seemed to do that. And then what was interesting is when they would go to sidebar. So if you sat on the defense side, you had a profile of her from the side. And when she turned and talked to Mr. Thomas, her attorney, you could see her and sometimes hear her. But when they would go to sidebar, she would turn her back to the crowd and look straight at where they were. So we couldn't see her face. So things like that were bizarre. But overall, just when Colby walked in, she said, "Oh, my baby," or something to that effect. When Melanie Gibb walked in, she gave her the elevator eyes, kind of mean girl, sort of standing there, like looking up and down. She seemed happy to see Audrey until Audrey said, "Yeah, she tried to kill me." And then Lori turned to her attorney and mouthed, "I did not." So there were little things like that we saw. And you could tell who she was happy to see. She seemed happy to see Zulema. And they avoided eye contact for a very long time. Zulema would look when it was clear Lori wasn't looking. I think a couple of times their eyes met. She seemed most uncomfortable with Melanie Gibb on the stand. That was the most uncomfortable I saw her. When her sister Summer was on the stand, she did wipe her eyes a couple of times. And she would wipe her eyes, but we weren't close enough to see if they were tears. But then 20 seconds later, she's giggling. So go figure. You know what I mean? She's so hard to read. It's like, it's clear that there's something there that's like not connecting.
I wonder if she's got a SAG card. I wonder if she's got a SAG card. What do you think, Melanie?
I was going to say either she's a great actress or a horrible actress.
Yeah.
I also wanted to know what you saw in the jury. Were they ever crying? Were they moved to tears? Were they horrified by these pictures? What was the demeanor? I think when I heard them poll the jury at the end, it sounded to me like there were maybe 7 men and 5 women. I don't even know if that composition is correct, but what did you notice about the jurors in particular?
Well, I'll say this. Moving this to Ada County was the best thing they could have done, because the jury and the alternates, I was there during jury selection. I made a list of what they did and kind of a rough age. We couldn't see them. We were down at overflow. We weren't allowed to be in the courtroom for jury selection. But it was interesting to watch the progression, because it wasn't really until Melanie Gibb got on the stand that the religious aspect of this came in. And then their eyes were like, well, that escalated quickly. And then there were certain things as they went along. The big reaction I saw also was when it was revealed that Alex Cox, who's Lori's brother, shot and killed Charles Vallow. That was a big moment. Autopsy pictures, men wiping their eyes, male jurors were crying. There was one woman who glanced for half a second and just couldn't look anymore. And then by the end, I think nothing shocked them towards the end of that 6 weeks. They had heard so much that's off the wall. I wonder how many of them have watched Sins of Our Mother on Netflix, by the way. Just since this ended and they can. Now, what was interesting too is at times they would listen to the witness or look at something on the screen, and then they would look at Lori to gauge her reaction, which 99% of the time was either no emotion or an inappropriate emotion. But the jury progressed as far as their knowledge of it. And as they digested bit by bit, I think the picture became clear. And a lot of that goes to the credit of the prosecution. We could have been there for 2 years explaining everything about this case. They took the most important pieces in bite size and fed the jury until this puzzle started coming together. And that missing piece, or that common piece, was Lori. And it was clear by the end, they knew what was up. They knew what was up. These text messages, the body cam video of her in Hawaii, which is out there publicly, by the way, she looks so bothered. And you think she's in this tiny bikini on the beach with Chad, who was shirtless. I'm just going to say it. Just because he's gross, and I'm not body shaming. I'm just saying I don't like the guy. But she looked bothered, like, okay, is this all? And her kids are in a frozen ground in Idaho, and she's here in Hawaii.
Let's gross the audience out just a little further and play that.
All right, ladies.
Trigger warning.
Come on. You standing, Lori? This is all you can, sir.
Do you have any questions regarding that?
Her demeanor here is just unbelievable. She sits Indian style after this, right? Yeah. She
So it is 14:39 hours on January 25th.
Any questions?
You have any questions for that? No?
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day.
All right.
Pretty amazing. The way she said, "Do you need anything further from me?" And Chad, the way he seemed to be more concerned about that than she did. That was my take on it when I first saw it. You know, as a police detective, I would be like, "Hey, we're serving you with some serious documents here. Do you have any questions for us?" And she was just like, "Do you have anything further?"
She's like, "Could you get me a margarita?"
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Parched. Can you get me
You're
a drink?
blocking the sun. Move.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
that
Can you
was
put some
really
lotion on my back?
Because my pool boy has man boobs. Can you get me a margarita?
You said it, not me, but I was thinking it. You know, and here's the thing too that blows my mind is that Chad, when they did the welfare check, and Lori said, "Oh yeah, he's a friend of my brother's." When they were husband and wife, and the investigators knew at that point they had been married, they noted that Chad got very nervous when they asked, "Where's JJ?" Alex and Chad look at each other and don't say anything. And then if you remember, Chad says, "I don't have Lori's number." And that's his wife. And eventually he gives the number and he said, "Well, I felt like you were accusing me of something." It's like every classic sign of somebody who's guilty. But Chad definitely was the nervous one. Melanie Gibbs said that on the phone when Chad called her after the welfare check, telling her not to talk to authorities, he was very nervous, to where Lori was super calm. Like, she was the calm one when it came to the authorities. He was scared when it got real.
Yeah.
Why do we have to wait till June of 24 for his trial?
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to go to trial. I'm going to tell you, Pryor would watch that jury at key moments during testimony. And I specifically remember when they played that mortuary call. He watched that jury, and there were times where you could think, you know, his facial expression was like, "Oh boy." You know, Chad has death on the table. Lori does not. There's a bargaining chip there.
Yeah.
Save the family, the trauma, save the money, because this is going to be in Boise. Everybody associated with this trial is from like Idaho Falls, Rexburg area, 5 to 6 hours away. I don't think Pryor in good faith could go back and tell Chad, "Yeah, I think we should take it to trial," because just at a minimum, the least evidence they had on Lori, whatever. I want to say another word, but I'll just hold it back.
You can.
But
Let it go.
Let it go.
For Hori is that the Tammy Daybell conspiracy, that was the weakest charge in my book. There was not a lot there in court that proved it. You know, you can use common sense, malachite rings. You're trying to order wedding stuff before Charles and Tammy are dead.
Mhm.
I've heard the case against Chad is much stronger. So she was convicted on the conspiracy for Tammy with very little evidence other than the jury being able to use their common sense. I hear it's a lot more ironclad against Chad. I can't imagine he'll take it, but he's Chad Daybell. You know, he was the brother of Jesus in another life.
Yeah.
You may think I got this. So it's going to be interesting to see, but he's got time to think about it.
Melanie,
Because
I got a question for you, Melanie, because again, what Gigi just brought up about Chad not, you know, his attorney advised him not to take it to trial and maybe take a plea bargain. How does that work? The district attorney, as far as I was concerned here in the Northeast, district attorney controls the narrative when it's offering pleas. It doesn't happen when a defense attorney, like defense attorneys will get together, obviously, with the district attorney, the lead district attorney, or the chief of the district attorney's office, and they will try to bargain. I've seen that. But a lot of times, if the DA wants to just slam the door, they could just say, "Hey, sit and spin. I'm going forward with this trial, whether you like it or not." I don't think Chad's attorney, and this is my opinion, you could correct me if I'm wrong, has a bargaining chip here. He can try to bargain for that, but they don't control what the state puts forward. They don't control what they are going to go forward with in a trial. It is a part of a negotiation. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, but let's make a deal.
Yeah.
You know, let's make a deal. It's going to cost the state a ton of money to try this case. They already spent a ton of money trying Lori's case. Is he private counsel, this attorney, or is he public defender?
Public defender.
Okay.
No, Chad's attorney's private. He
Right,
owns
and-
the deed to Chad's house, by the way.
Oh, okay. So he's getting paid by the hour, which, you know, he was sat in court for how many hours?
Right.
You know, he's got probably a lien on the house, a deed to the house. If Chad wants to take death off the table and go to prison for life, that is probably something that I would think would be a good deal for him. But again, if he thinks he's a prophet and he thinks that the Lord is going to save him and get him somehow out of this, he may be, you know, the kind of guy who wants to get out there and roll the dice.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be smart of him, but his attorney can certainly go to the DA and say, what do you want to offer? Let's take death off the table and I'll see if my guy will take a deal.
Yeah. Gigi, what were some of your takeaway moments? I know we had a bomb scare, right? Or some type of bomb scare during the course of this trial. There was
That was Murdoch.
okay, right.
Oh, I would love to do a show on that.
I'm old, man. So, but there was an EMS called for Larry, right? He had some type of palpitations or something like that in the trial. But is there anything else wonky about this trial that stand out in your mind, or was it pretty straightforward?
Smooth as butter. I don't think I've ever sat in a trial that ran this smoothly ever. There were no hiccups. The day that Larry got sick, actually, that was during the 15-minute break where the attorneys were talking to Lori about whether or not she wanted to take the stand. And I think he got overwhelmed. Just testimony was over pretty much unless she took the stand. We knew it was about to go to the jury and it just hit him. And he was okay. He went home, slept, felt much better, and was there the next day. But other than that, no. I mean, I wish it had been live streamed for everybody to watch that's been invested. But other than that, there was nothing that happened during this trial that delayed it or made it weird. Lindsay Blake, the prosecutor, her dad passed away. She was at it the next day. Questioned Melanie Gibb, didn't miss a beat.
Wow.
So, I mean, as far as the smoothness of the trial, couldn't complain. The court staff was amazing. They were accommodating, and the attorneys all got along. They were nice off duty. I got to talk to all sides,
Right.
and they all get along too. They're all from a very small area. They know each other. They would laugh at breaks. It's not like it was, a celebrity death match in there. It was very much focused on the kids and Tammy, and very, very well run trial by all Judge Boyce, the attorneys, everybody.
Yeah, because I know Judge Boyce took a lot of heat from Larry and Kay Woodcock. Particularly, Larry was upset with the fact that he was going to be not able to go into the courtroom during the testimony and so forth. So it started off a little rocky, but I felt that Judge Boyce really, from what I could see and from what I'm hearing you're saying, is he ran a very good and efficient courtroom. So that's all you can ask for here, and to have the professionals come from the prosecutor side, their witnesses, it looked like all the police detectives and all of the FBI and all of the witnesses that came up and gave testimony. It was all very smoothly done.
Yeah. Very, very much. I was surprised, with Lori, with the incompetency. I'm surprised we had a trial and a verdict. I really thought that she would be like, I think it's David Brazil, or it was the guy who kidnapped Elizabeth Smart. He was in and out of competency for like 7 or 8 years. And I really thought that would be the case here, but it went off without a hitch, and we have guilty verdicts on all counts. And now she got 2 more big charges in Arizona waiting. So yeah, kudos to everybody that had a hand in that trial, because we knew every day what to expect. And they're just, other than when Lori, and I have to tell you, the day that she did not want to sit in there, it was interesting because I've never seen this happen. All the bailiffs at one point leave the courtroom and go into this door that's right behind where the judge sits. My theory, and this is pure speculation on my part, is that they drugged her or gave her medication, because she does have a forced meds order. Right. And about 30 minutes after that, and the judge ruled she had to stay, she slept until the end of court. It was a solid 30 minutes, maybe a little more. In fact, when we had to rise for the jury, they had to nudge her. So that was the only thing that was even a halfway delayed, was when I think she had a freak out moment back there. And I just expect, because she never struggled with staying awake the whole trial, but that day she was chin down to her chest and asleep as that progressed with the autopsy pictures of JJ and Tylee and Tammy.
I watched your coverage on that day where you were on Law and Crime, and you were also on News Nation. In the state of Idaho, you cannot utilize the insanity plea, right? And when they talk about this period of time that it took to get Lori right, to take Shallow Vallow, to get her to trial and get her right, it involved lots of medication. So that is, like you said, that was not off the table. That day they knew what was going to be presented was graphic photos and so forth. They probably doubled up, or by doctor's orders gave her a little bit more. I was shocked that this trial didn't get stopped when they asked, when her defense team asked if she could skip out on the afternoon session that day. That's when I said to myself, oh shit, she's going to stop playing this game. But much to our surprise, she did not. Yeah,
we were waiting on it. And that's why I do think, because we were in the courtroom without a bailiff, and that never happens. Right. When that courtroom has people in it, you have a bailiff in there. It was all 3 of them back in there. I don't know what happened. That's just my speculation. But that was just, I was waiting on something. Right. I was waiting on something, a shoe to drop, because that's just been par for the course with this case. We had the 10 months of incompetency. And then right before, I think it was November of last year, there was a question again about her competency. And I thought, here we go, it's going to get delayed. But she was very quickly deemed competent and ready to stand trial. And it happened. So it's one for the books, Yeah. It's, gosh, I mean, it defies words, y'all. I mean, that's all I can say. I've sat through some really, really rough stuff, and this just was terrible.
Yeah.
Did you have to get up at 4 a.m. to get in line every day to get a seat in the courtroom? Because it looked like a tiny gallery. And I did hear some people saying they weren't giving out tickets or wristbands, that you had to
these were my tickets. I have a ticket for every day. The only day that I didn't get in was openings. And then I got in the rest of that day. I missed one day because I took my daughter. I flew home. Took me 15 hours to get here. Took my daughter to see Taylor Swift in Atlanta. But other than that, no. What happened was you had at 8 a.m. every morning Mountain Time, tickets for the next day opened up. And of course, I think there were 60 seats in that courtroom, or 70 that were available for the general public. This was the only trial I've ever sat in where the media did not have designated 15, 20 seats for the media. So we were all fighting for tickets. Wow. The coolest thing is this. People like Justin Lum, Nate Eaton, that have been on this since day one. There was a day Justin Lum could not get in. And what happens? Well, a viewer of his happened to have a ticket and said, here, take my ticket. You could transfer them to other people if you couldn't make it that day. Wow. Or if somebody left and somebody was in overflow, whoever was like first in overflow could have come up. Wow. But it was stressful because you could go to the overflow room, but the cameras were so bad, to be honest. You could not see any detail on her face. It's 3 screens, one showing the judge, one showing the defense table, one showing the prosecution. So it was 3 and it was small. So I got very lucky that I was live on the air every morning at 8. So the people in New York at Law and Crime got my ticket every day, and I'm going to send them a nice little gift. But it was stressful because, you're in Idaho. There were people that flew in from across the country and did not know you had to get a ticket, and they didn't get a ticket. So, it was a day-to-day stress of whether or not you were going to sit in. And it's important, for people to watch it, but for me to be able to watch that jury and gauge reactions at things or watch her reaction. You couldn't do that in the overflow room. Very stressful stuff. But I'm thinking about taking all these. I have a ton more, and I'm going to put it around, not a picture of Lori, but a picture of the victims, because, JJ had autism, and this kind of looks like the puzzle pieces that represents autism. So I'm going to put it around with the victims' faces because, every one of these every day was a day closer to those guilty verdicts. And that's going to go right here in my studio.
I heard you make a reference on your channel. I think it was the night before. You were like, if I can't get into that room, into the courtroom, I'm going to jack somebody. Something.
Look, for verdict, it was a free for all. So we all got there. They only opened the door that day. It started at 9. They opened the door about 8:30, and I was having to come down every hour on the hour to do a hit for Law and Crime just to update what's happening. And I was joking, and I said, I will trip little old ladies to get my seat, and you guys will be covering me on your podcast and on Law and Crime, which I never would, but don't tempt me, because I sat 6 weeks. I said, if I don't get that verdict, if I don't get a seat for that verdict after 6 weeks, I'm going to cry and knock little old ladies down in the process. But thank goodness didn't come to that. It filled up very fast once they announced the verdict. I actually rode the elevator up with a lot of the investigators and Lindsay Blake. And they were nervous watching them because Lori was a little late getting there. And I'd heard they were keeping her in the bowels of the courthouse during deliberations. And so I thought, something's happening. Like, she's refusing to come up there. She's flipping out. Something's going on. But watching the investigators, they were a mixture of nervous, but at the same time, they were calm because I think they knew the job they did. Nailed her to the wall, and it did. And those investigators, some of them got up there and choked up and cried on that stand. And it's one thing to see it on a screen, as horrific as it was. You have people like Detective Hermosillo, these guys that were there when they found the kids' bodies, that, describing how they could only dig where Tylee was for 2 minutes at a time because of the stench of burnt flesh and accelerant, which I believe was gasoline. Man, these people, and look, I'm not one of these that says, oh, men don't cry. Of course, men cry. The effect to their hearts of seeing this firsthand, these beautiful children, what was left of Tylee, will stay with them for the rest of it. And you've done this. You're a homicide detective. There are some things that never leave you. And I think that's going to be the case for a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
And gals and women, men and women who were there. One disturbing thing that I saw on the juror monitor, Tylee, they found her heart and lungs, and they were still connected.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't hear that. Or if they did mention it, I didn't catch that. So thank you for that.
They were shrunken, but they were still connected.
Wow. That's powerful. Kay Vallow Woodcock is in the chat. She's saying,
hey, Kay.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Gigi.
I love Kay and Larry. They're the best.
It's funny that I got to highlight this comment, because I look at the comments, but I try to stay focused on what we're talking about. And if I look at the comments, I get sidetracked. But I just happened to glance over and I saw Kay, and Kay and Larry. It was the next piece that I was going to play here, is after the verdict. They're there, and Charles's brother Jerry is right behind them. And I want to play this piece now that she's here. This is after the verdict, and you could just see the relief on all of their faces. And I was watching this from my office, and I felt myself. So I was just so happy for them that they got this just verdict that Larry and Kay and everybody has been fighting for across not just the nation, but across the world. So let's play this little piece. It's 12 minutes long. I'm not going to play it all, but we're going to play. This is immediately after they just walked out of the courthouse.
Guys, we got 2 more trials. 2 more.
3.
She's correcting him.
Charles, Chad, and Brandon.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I mean,
Well,
Charles
okay.
is in Arizona.
Yeah.
Brandon's in Arizona.
The next trial is Chad. I look forward to being back in this courthouse again. If that happens, I hope everybody is here again. I hope that y'all appreciate so much the court system, how meticulous the prosecution was. I think everybody will agree it was amazing job by all of them. And I want y'all to know that even the defense, I shook their hands. I have said many times, I want a fair, honest, and righteous decision. I think we had 18 jurors that all deserve our appreciation, our love, and they gave an honest, fair, and righteous verdict.
You guys really embraced each other in there at the reading of the verdict. What did you say to each other in that moment?
I love you. What else can you say?
Larry, what was it like walking out, seeing all the law enforcement officers in the hallway?
Do what?
What was it like walking out, seeing all of the law enforcement officers who have spent countless hours in the
Oh,
hallway?
I know. We would be
And-
nowhere without them.
You know, as much as I have said up here about the prosecution, the defense, the jurors, Nate, you made an absolute great statement. We have to appreciate, support our law enforcement officials. Those guys sacrificed from their families, from their homes. We will never know the countless hours that they have put in, how much sacrifice they have gone through, and most of all, what they have seen in this case that maybe some people will never unsee. I love them. I appreciate them. There's not one of these guys I wouldn't go in a dark alley with. I cannot thank them enough. Next question.
Hey, Larry, what is your final message to Lori Vallow?
My final message to Lori. Y'all ready? Turn out the lights.
I love it.
The party's over. They say that all good things. Y'all ready? Turn out the lights. The party's over. They say that all good things must end. Lori, it ended.
Well, that was perfect. And there's 6 minutes more of that, but I had to play it because I was planning to play it on the show. It just, Kay came into the chat and that was just perfect timing there.
Now, you know that song has special meaning because there's a video of JJ on one of their charter buses.
Mhm.
Papa comes up. JJ's got the microphone. Papa takes it. JJ or Papa starts singing that song. You can barely see him in the reflection of the window, but the giggle that JJ gives his Papa when he's singing that is so infectious. And there were a few nights I went back and watched that just to hear JJ laugh on the tougher days. And so for those of us who have seen that video, I was like, how perfect that turn out the lights. The party's over. You're not ever going to be free again to do this to anybody. But man, what a sweet little dude JJ was. I never got to meet him or Tylee or Tammy, but you know, you feel like you know him after these trials and talking to Kay and Larry about him. And that was Kresha, by the way, Kay's daughter on the far right, JJ's aunt. And yeah, just that little giggle. If you haven't seen it, I will put it on my Twitter and tweet it out because that giggle will stay with you.
Yeah. Awesome. And I want to just say this too, as a retired law enforcement professional, words like that from victims' families means the world to us. You know, I responded to the World Trade Center on 9/11, many calls for service to homes for various different reasons, covering things from sexual assaults to homicides to suicides and so forth. When you get thanks like that, and that was a class act for Larry to do that. And I'm sure it didn't seem like he had a prepared speech. That came from the heart. So I just personally, on behalf of all law enforcement across the United States, say thank you to Kay and Larry Woodcock for that statement, because it means a lot to the men and women who are out there putting their life on the line for us.
Yes, they are salt of the earth people. I don't know better people than Kay and Larry Woodcock.
And I got to say, I know Kay's brother Jerry and his wife Melanie, great people.
Yes.
So, they mirror these folks, and I've had many conversations with them as well. Melanie, before we let Gigi go, I got to share her channel, but I know that you might have something else that you might want to ask her in regards to trial or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, we did a live stream of the verdict, Ron and I, and I had a hard time keeping it together when they read the verdict. And then the judge, before he read the verdict, kind of admonished the gallery, like, I don't want to hear any sounds or yelling or reactions or whatever. So I could not believe that Lori remained standing throughout that verdict. Like, she didn't collapse into her seat. She didn't fall over. What was the reaction from the people in the courtroom that were watching? Did you burst out into tears like I did?
I did have some tears fall, but it felt like the air got lighter. All of the sudden, it doesn't bring any of these precious people back, but it holds her accountable. And to know that the justice system, starting with the minute Kay and Larry called in that welfare check, to Brandon saying, oh my gosh, I found an obituary for Chad's wife. All that stuff kicked this off. And to watch this for 3.5 years, to go from where are the kids for months and months and months to unfortunately finding the kids. And like you say, these investigators that poured their heart and soul and spent time away from their children, their wives, their loved ones, to see justice be served by a group of people who I think never had heard much about Lori Vallow in the first place. It just made it a little lighter for a second. Like, okay, this is one hurdle we've crossed. More to go, like Larry said. If Chad takes it to trial, we'll be there. And we'll be there and we'll feel that same feeling when he's found guilty. And now we've got 2 more for Kay's brother, Charles, in Arizona, and for Brandon Boudreaux, who, thank goodness, was not murdered by this crew. He could have been number 5. So the air was lighter outside when Kay and Larry walked out one of JJ's favorite songs was We Will Rock You by Queen. Larry had his iPad up there during deliberations, and it was just the bailiff, and it was very relaxed in there. And Larry was playing JJ's favorite songs with the biggest smile on his face. And I'll never forget it. It was a moment where Larry was thinking of his grandson and not all this, and not worried about the verdict or deliberations. So when they walked out in that crowd saying, We Will Rock You, I was about to go on camera and I said, I'm about to cry. You got to stop. So I said, you guys have to stop. And I ran over and gave them a hug. And they have an army behind them who love all of these victims, and we'll be here until that last verdict is given and these people go away, and then they're a bad memory. And then we keep their names and their spirits and their stories alive, because they have stories that need to be told. And so far we haven't been able to do that fully, because we've had Loco hanging over our heads, and Peter Griffin, as we call him, Chad Daybell, and Alex Cox, and all the other players who are very much responsible for what happened. But for that moment, it was like a weight went off of everybody's shoulders, because verdicts can be very unknown. Casey Anthony, you think it's a shoe-in. This jury got it right. Hats off to them. And I hope they're doing okay, because their civic duty was to look at some of the worst things you could ever look at. And they took it to heart, went back there, did their job, came up with the right verdict. So 1 down, 3 to go. But you know what? I think it's going to be good results all along the way. And we're right there with this family through all of it.
Yeah. And that's the best that we can do, is to support the victims' families. And that's what we do here on Crime Time with DutyRon. I encourage everybody to do that, because Gigi, as you know, there's real people behind these tragedies, right? And a lot of people who talk about this stuff, whether it's on a podcast or on a YouTube or even some major news networks, they're disconnected.
Yeah.
I know firsthand what it's like to go someone's home and make a death notification. It is not easy. It tugs on your heart. It tugs at your soul, your mind, your whole everything. And it doesn't leave. It doesn't leave you. And that's why I say to you, Gigi, and to all of the great reporters who covered this case, and everyone who's involved that has hands-on and touches these families, to if it's bothering you, seek counseling, seek help, talk to somebody about this, because it doesn't go away. And I'm going to tell you firsthand, from serving 20 years in the New York City Police Department, it does not go away. So there's things that you see that can't be unseen, and there's things that remain. And that's something that a lot of people don't like to talk about. But that is the bottom line, is you need to speak about it. If you don't have a good support system, you need to reach out and get professional help. And I've done it. I'm not ashamed to say it. I've done it myself numerous times. My partner was shot and killed in 1996. That was a difficult time for me. Dressing his 2 little boys at the funeral was something I'll never be able to just erase from my memory. So that's one of my messages to everybody out there, is to don't ever feel like you're weak if you need to go and speak with somebody. Gigi, if it's okay with you, I would like to just show your YouTube channel to everybody.
Oh yeah, please do. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So she's got this great YouTube channel / podcast. She does. Do you have a podcast? Like, do you do it on Spotify and all that stuff?
Yep.
Okay. So Gigi's Pretty Lies and Alibis, here it is. It's linked down below in the description. Pauline, thank you for the support, and thank you to everyone who's given super chat or has became channel members during the course of this live stream and then afterwards. The super thanks too. I want to thank everybody for that. But Gigi, she has all of her stuff set up really nicely. You can look at all of these videos here. She's got a ton of uploads and videos about this case. And I'm sure that there's a YouTube short.
Look, who picks these thumbnails for the shorts? Because they pick the worst thumbnail for me every time, DutyRon. I'm just saying.
Go and look at my shorts. I've got Melanie making funny faces. You can't control the shorts. I don't know why.
There's a way to.
And if you want to dive deeper into this case, I have 58 episodes that tell everything we know. I'm going to go back in and add what we've learned to trial. It's just below that. It's called Connecting the Dots. And that goes literally from the day Lori and Chad were born all the way up to what we know now. and I'm going to amend some of those with what we learned in trial. But if you're interested in learning all of it, and believe me, we only scratched the surface, unfortunately, at this trial. Things go way back with Lori, with the custody battle with Joe Ryan, who I fully would not be shocked if that wasn't her first victim. But, you know, a very difficult time for Tylee during that as a very little girl. So if you want the whole backstory, I got that there too. But thank you for pushing the channel. I love what I do. And it was an honor to be a voice for these victims, and to be able to keep everybody whose heart has been invested in this since that first press release about them to be able to bring it to them. So it was an honor.
Yeah. And Gigi, you did it with style and class and dignity. I watched a lot of your stuff as I researched before you were coming on live with me, but I've been watching you on Law and Crime and on News Nation. But when I did a deep dive into your channel, then that's when I really got to see the real person you are. And I can't thank you enough on behalf of all of these victims and families. You really did a great job. And I'm not just kissing your ass. I'm just telling it the truth, because I call it as I see it. And everybody that's here with me for a long time knows that I'm not going to, just do, I'm not just going to pour it on just to pour it on. You did a great job. So
thank you. That means a lot. I really appreciate that. I'm trying not to cry.
Yeah.
Not a lot of reporters cover with empathy,
Well, that's
just,
I was raised that way. I'm Southern, and it's not about us. It's not about my channel. It's about getting their stories out there and getting the truth out there. Facts matter. I don't do speculation or rumor. What really happened needs to be known, and speculating's fun, but it's all facts for me, and we want the story told. And as uncomfortable as it is, what was done to these 4 victims in this case needs to be known. And so, yeah. So thank you very much for having me on. I'm a huge fan of yours, and I'm honored.
Well, we'll continue. If you don't mind, I would love to have you back again sometime soon when you have more time. And
I'm free, Ron. I'm home. I don't even know what to do with myself being home. I was so happy to sit in the car line today. I was like, I'm just sitting here with angry parents, and I'm happy. Right. So it's been great, but I am going back for sentencing. So I will be there to see her sentenced to life in prison. And that would be the bow on top.
Gigi, can you see this comment that I have highlighted up?
Oh, okay. I love you guys. They are just good human beings. And in spite of all this tragedy, still have time to give people a smile and a hug on the darkest days in that courtroom. You won't find finer people than Kay and Larry Woodcock.
And we're going to continue to follow this case as it develops when it goes forward with Chad Daybell. Also, any new trials or impending, court proceedings with Lori Vallow, as I like to call her, Shallow. And we still have Charles, and we need to, bring justice forward for him and for his family. So, again, on behalf of, Melanie, myself, and Gigi, go ahead, Gigi.
Can we talk about one quick thing before we go? There was a young lady in there who I got to know that looked like Tylee Ryan that Lori would stare at. Now, this came from Annie Cushing. She put this together, but I want you guys to look at this. This young lady was in trial almost every day, just as a local. And right before the verdict, it was said that Lori stared at her. So I hope that haunted her in some small way.
God. Wow. No.
Yeah.
I wonder if somebody went to central casting to try and find someone to look like her.
You know what? If it made Lori feel like crap, good.
But she was a local. So
she was a local with her mom every day. Same age as Tylee. And Annie Cushing said the same kind of spitfire attitude that Tylee had.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, can you imagine Lori Vallow sitting there looking at remains on the screen and looking over and seeing this beautiful young woman here?
Holy cow.
Yep.
That's unbelievable.
It is.
Wow. Mel, you have any final words before we wrap it up?
I listened to your latest podcast today while I was in the car driving to pick up my kids. And it was so interesting that you talked about how being there for 6 weeks, that you, like, everyone in the courtroom became like a family, how you made friends with all the other reporters that were there that could have been your competitors. It wasn't really like anybody was competing against each other, to the bailiffs and the court officers. And what a wonderful, group of people that I guess you got to spend 6 weeks with. So it was interesting to hear about that.
Indeed. Yes, everybody was willing to help. It wasn't, oh, what's your ratings? It's, hey, I didn't catch that. What did you hear? Oh, this is what I heard. It was just a collaboration. Everybody in that courtroom wanted justice for these precious souls, and it just, everything else went to the side. That's how it should be when you're covering true crime. True crime isn't a competition. If it is, you're doing it for all the wrong reasons. It's a collaboration. We all have something unique to bring to the table. How we bring it, how we deliver it, we're all different. And that was very evident in this courtroom, whether you were a national reporter or a podcaster like me who happened to hop on, a little bit. Everybody was there for the right reasons, and it showed. And what a great group we had in there every single day for these beautiful people, including the family. So,
Gigi, you said so many things really well here, but again, right, what you just said, if you're in a competition and you're doing true crime, you're in it for the wrong reason. And I wholeheartedly agree with you on that, because we're here all to support victims and their families and to get their stories out there. And if you're in it for any other reason, then it's not a good look.
No.
I want to say thank you to Nate Eaton from East Idaho News. Brian Enton, who is a personal friend of mine. We talk back and forth. I've had him on my show many times to sit and chat with us about many different cases.
Justin Lum from Phoenix.
Yeah. It could be a long list. I mean, I have pages and pages of notes here. I could have wrote probably 2 full pages of great reporters that were covering this case and doing it respectfully. And that's really the key, is to do it with respect. So I can't thank you guys all enough for the coverage. I know the families appreciate everything that you guys done. And that's, really just a great grouping of people. And I saw it also with the Murdaugh trial. There was quite a bit more attention to that trial. There was, many more reporters, but our grouping was there. The people who were just mentioned, they were all pretty much there at certain points. And they all carry themselves with a lot of respect. And I like that. All right, guys and girls, I want to thank everybody for watching. I know you guys put a lot of questions in the chat. I apologize to the live chatters. I love you guys. So if you can, please give this video a thumbs up, like and share, subscribe, get it out there, put it onto your social media platforms. Also to leave us comments and questions down below, because the great part about live streams is it's not over after we hit the end broadcast button. You can continue the conversation by leaving a comment down below in the comment sections. Myself, I know Melanie scans the comments, but she's busy quite a bit during the course of the day. She scans the comments, and I know Gigi will look back at the comments. Let us know what you thought of this live interactive broadcast, hour and 20 minutes. I appreciate everyone hanging in there with us on a Tuesday evening. And thank you to the moderators. You guys are our unsung heroes. The Mod Squad is some of the greatest men and women out there in the true crime community, because what they do is allow people to respectfully post their opinions and their comments, as long as it's done with respect, and you don't attack any of my guests or any of the people we speak about or any of the families we speak about. You're welcome to be here, but if you do cross that line, you get the kibosh. You get the kibosh.
You're out of here.
We got Audi 5000. All right, Gigi, thank you so much. I want everyone to stand by for a message from the cop team. That is Kara, my partner, my co-host's dog, Oscar, who's my 15-year-old dachshund, that's the hot dog, and my 37-year-old African gray parrot, Popeye. That stands COP, cops. All right, guys, good night from New York City, and we will.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Peace and love.